Welcome to the Aging Boomers. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. And of course, on this show, we discuss so many of the issues facing boomers, their parents, and what we know, of course, is an aging population. And I just wanted to, of course, thank everybody for all their support. So many of you have gone on to iTunes or iHeartRadio and listened to the shows and actually signed up to get the podcasts on a regular basis, or many of you have also downloaded the free app on your iPhone or Android phone or iPad. And so thanks so much, and thanks. We got some great comments, so keep them coming in. We love it. And any suggestions, of course, that you have, please let us know. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to let everybody know that today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, a professional senior placement and elder care management organization that has a national network of advisors to help in determining the right path for seniors, whether it's living or just receiving proper care in their home. So whether it is in-home care, assisted living, residential, or memory care, get the necessary advice from a senior care advisor in your area by calling Senior Care Authority directly at 888-809-1231, or you can go to their website at www.seniorcareauthority.com. Very excited about our guest. She is an award-winning journalist. Virginia Morris has devoted her career to researching and writing about healthcare, medical research, and related social and political issues. Her book, How to Care for Aging Parents, now in its third edition, won the Books for a Better Life Award and was named the best book on the subject by the Wall Street Journal. It was described as indispensable by AARP and the Bible of Elder Care by ABC World News. Virginia is also the author of Talking About Death. She has been featured on Oprah, The Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS Morning Show. You got all the main ones there. Primetime, ABC World News with Diane Sawyer, Katie, and a host of other national media. She has testified on elder care issues before the U.S. Joint Economic Committee in 2007, and now she lectures around the country on both subjects. Virginia, thank you so much for joining us on the Aging Boomers.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, you were saying you're out east and a lot of snow falling, but I bet hopefully it's a pretty snow, huh?
Yeah, if you have to be cold, you might as well be cold in the snow.
That's right. So, I want to learn more about your book in just a few minutes, but I'd like to start out talking with you more about communications with parents. We emphasize communication so much on our show, but if you don't approach a parent in the right way or in the correct manner, it could backfire. Would you agree with that?
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
So what are the steps you recommend if you're going to be approaching a parent on a particular subject matter?
Well, maybe it's helpful to start with how not to approach
that might be a
parent.
good thing. Yeah,
because I think with all the best intentions, we often come at it the wrong way. And, I think one mistake that families often make is the kids will see there's an issue and they all get together and talk, and then they come to mom and dad or one or the other and they have a plan. Like, we have this great plan and you could move in with Carol and you can, sell your house and you can, do all these things. And I think that's probably the fastest way to shut the door on any conversation. None of us want our kids particularly to come, present the plan of how we're going to live our lives without talking to us and listening to us first. I think treating your parent, no matter how frail or ill, or even if they have dementia, as though they're a child is a big mistake. And I think coming to them with just armloads of information and brochures and documents in the first conversation is, just will put them off completely. I think the most important thing is that you come at it listening. You know, you have your issues, you have things you're concerned about. Maybe they shouldn't be living in this big old house, or maybe they have financial issues they need to talk about. But first listen to them. You know, what are your concerns about the future? What is hard for you today? What are things I can do to help you? And really, really hear them, you know, because what concerns you may not at all be what concerns them, and you need to deal with their issues first. And then bring up your concerns, and again, listen. You know, do you worry about falling down these stairs, or do you worry about this or that happening to Dad, or running out of money? But really try to keep them at the helm as much as possible. This is their life, and see what they want. And I think how to bring it up, you know, obviously depends on where you are in the situation, but I think just talking to them about life, sometimes you can sort of just get a conversation in the direction you want, you know, like how are things going? What do you worry about? Asking questions. I think sometimes just asking advice, like parents love to be asked for advice. So if you're concerned about your parents' finances, you might sit down and say, well, you know, Fred and I are looking over our financial situation, and we've signed these documents, a living will, or we've redone our wills, and it made me think, what are yours up to date? Or, you know, what did you do? Or how did you handle this? How did you save for retirement? You know, what should I be doing? You know, that will often open the door quite a bit. Talk about somebody else's situation. You know, gee, when Aunt Mary went into that nursing home, you know, would you have picked that? What would you have wanted in that situation? So there's lots of ways to kind of open the door. And the other thing I would just add is, you know, don't expect to just sit down and we're going to talk about this, and this all in one conversation. You know, this takes time. It's multiple conversations. It's why it's so important to start early, because it can take months, if not years, to actually make headway and make plans and do things. So, you know, just opening the door, getting the conversation started. Don't try to get it all done in one sitting.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up some great points, but one thing I do know, and, you know, working in the industry myself, is timing is essential. So, I mean, if you have a conversation and take the right approach, like you suggested, it could certainly work extremely well when the parents or the particular parent is actually cognitively good, and you're kind of planning for the future. But that same conversation with someone who is at a, you know, early or mid-level stage of dementia could have a whole different effect. So, you know, I've always said try to do it early, you know, have those conversations early on, but some people, you know, have a tough time doing that. So what do you suggest in the case of, you know, where it's a little more than just planning. It's we've got to do something next week. So how do you suggest in those situations? What do you suggest?
Well, and backing up one step, you raised such an important point, because people always say to me, oh, yeah, I don't have to worry about that. My parents are fine.
Right.
And you and I both know that's when you need to start having the conversation. So I think most of us sort of think things will just kind of take care of themselves, and when we get there, in quotes, we'll deal with it, without realizing that you really need to have those conversations long before you need help or services or financial help, or, you know, do it as soon as possible. And I think if there was one message I could get across today, that would be it, is start now, you know, don't wait, and whatever the conversation is. So maybe you have the legal documents in place, and maybe you've even gotten the financial situation, but have you really talked about, Mom, if you couldn't live here anymore, where would you want to live? What are the options? How realistic are those options? And honestly, the reason I wrote the second book about talking about death is and take it to that extent. When you say don't drag it out, what exactly do you mean? What in these different circumstances would you want me to do, and how do you want me to think about this? If I'm your healthcare proxy and I have to make decisions for you, what should I be doing? So all of these conversations, start as early as possible, but have the ones that you sort of think, oh, well, that's a long way off. I don't need to be discussing that. And then keep them up to date. So maybe you've talked about it, but now you're going to revisit it. And remember when you told me such and such about, I don't ever want to be on a respirator. Well, now you have this diagnosis. Do you still feel that way? Or, how has that changed? But as far as your question, when you're in the thick of it and suddenly, boy, conversations need to happen now, unfortunately that's why people like me go all over the country saying,
right.
Don't wait.
Yeah.
Don't wait.
That's why you do that. I do the show. We don't want to wait. Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think if I could just have my loudspeaker and go around the country, it would just be, plan it now, talk about it now, because all of us who do this for a living know reacting to a crisis is a terrible place to be with no plans in place. But sometimes even if you've talked and planned and done all the right things come up that you just couldn't have possibly imagined, and you're making decisions kind of by the seat of your pants. Hopefully you have some kind of, healthcare directive, and you have power of attorney, and you're in a situation where if your parent can't make decisions for themselves, you can legally make those decisions. And hopefully you have open communication with family members, which is often an enormously difficult problem. But, get together with your siblings, whether it's over a conference call or whatever, and you need to pound it out and get whoever it is, doctor involved or the financial expert involved, and, just go through it as clearly as you can, but and keep it as business-like as you can, because it certainly can ruin sibling relationships too. But
yeah.
I think as much as you can constantly remember who your parent was, what their priorities were, and keep those at the forefront as opposed to everybody else's thoughts on what they should or shouldn't do. It's interesting how different people's wishes are and what they really wanted. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes decisions just have to be made quickly and on the fly, and I think all of us just do this as well as we possibly can, and nobody does it perfectly. I do. I've been doing this for 25 years now, and even when it came to my own parents, you find yourself in situations where, okay, this isn't ideal, and I think we all just do the best we can and need to, accept that and not be too hard on ourselves. But you do what you can.
Yeah. Now, and this could happen kind of on both ends of the conversation, but I'm sure you've gotten this question a lot. I certainly have, where the adult child or children do everything right. They approach it right, timing's good, and the response is, "Don't worry, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be fine. Don't worry, your mom and I will take care of things." Just, so they kind of close it off. And I've seen it the other way, where the parent brings it up to the adult children and they say, "Dad, you're not going anywhere. You're fine. You're in great physical shape. Stop worrying." So what do you do in those situations where they just...
Well, I'd say that's sort of the norm.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the unusual when everybody wants to talk and sits down and has this nice open conversation. I would say the norm is one or the other side just being very uncomfortable with it, or both sides being very uncomfortable with it. But yeah, you're right. It's, "Oh, honey, why do you bring up such things?" And, funny, one time I was talking with some, I hate to call them children, but, the children of an aging parent, adults, And they said, oh, we couldn't talk to her. I think we were talking about end-of-life care or something, and they said, oh, we could never talk. She would never want to talk about that. So I went over and found the mother, and I said, is this something you'd ever talk about? And she said, oh, I'd love to, but my kids would never be able to talk about
That's
that.
funny.
So,
That's
I think sometimes we're just assuming that the other side doesn't want to talk. And, when they say, oh, we're fine, don't worry about it, obviously that's great, but Mom, I really want to talk about this more seriously than that. And I think you have to just very gently and with a lot of respect continue to push and say, yeah, but these are things I really need to talk about, and I want to know what's going on. I think, it just gives everybody some peace of mind if you can get it out there. Everybody worries about it, and you may not get all of it discussed. You probably won't get all of it discussed, but with a little pressure, you can at least get some basic stuff done. If you really hit a wall, I think sometimes a geriatric care manager, which are professionals you hire and who are trained to kind of do just this, come in and assess the situation and talk to people and get people interacting with each other. But, sometimes that can help, or a family mediator, or if you're in the doctor's office, encourage, if you ask the doctor ahead of time, gee, we need to talk about Dad's driving, when he's in there next, do you think you could raise the subject? Or if there's a, financial person in their life, or going to those experts sometimes help. I find sometimes too that someone else in the family can be successful where you're not, and that is terribly aggravating but effective. So you've tried 3 or 4 times and gotten nowhere, and your brother from the other coast shows up and, hey, Mom, I want to talk about, and, oh, well, yes, we definitely should.
Right. So, a third party, I mean, you mentioned geriatric care manager, which could be good.
A third party is often good, just they've heard from you too many times. Bring it up in a different way. It's funny how sometimes it comes up at odd times, but, I would just encourage people to keep pushing, to don't, I think we don't want to talk about it either. So when our parents say, oh, let's not discuss this, we're very happy to say, oh, okay, well, I tried, done with that.
Right.
We need to keep at it.
And some of the tougher things, of course, and we've discussed them on the show previously, but we can't discuss it enough. But, could be, maybe it's time to make a move, a physical move. It's time to really, you may have to stop driving, or, there's so many other things. So when it gets into kind of serious conversation about a particular thing, and the parent, pushes back, any suggestions?
Well, I think, again, this is the norm. I mean, I think people are always telling me, oh, but my parent's particularly difficult about this. And I know your parent is completely normal. Right. This is what happens. No one wants to talk about this stuff particularly. But, yeah, sometimes, often, there's an issue that needs very quick and aggressive attention. And I think particularly if, like, driving. So if there's an issue that this is no longer about your parents' life and safety, this is about the safety of other people, then you don't have any choices. You have to get involved. And you maybe are going to get people angry at you, but you need to get involved. And that doesn't mean just walking in and taking away the keys, but it means some very serious conversations, possibly getting, a doctor or physical therapist involved, asking to get your parent retested, and, being pretty tough about it. Because if you find out some 7-year-old kid was run over by your parent, how will you live with yourself? I mean, you can't let other people be in danger. But like in that situation, go for a drive with your parent. Make sure that this really is an issue. Make sure it's not something that could be easily solved with, a different brake shift or a different lighting situation, or maybe they don't drive at night or in the rain, or where they have to take left turns. I mean, again, talking about it sooner rather than later, you can sort of wean them from their car rather than one big blast of, okay, you can't drive anymore.
Yeah.
And the same with moving. I think that's a little different because now you're talking about something that isn't somebody else's life. It's your parents' life. And most people don't want to move out of their home. So, that I would give different advice about, because I think you have to listen to them and discuss the risks and discuss the options and sort of, is this a risk you're really willing to take? And, sometimes parents would rather live at home and have a shorter life and fall down the stairs than live in, that bubble that you sort of would like them to live in.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the earlier the better, because then maybe you have time to go visit different places and really see what it's about and give them time to digest it. Because it is a lot. I mean,
Sure.
Even with my own mother, it took like a year and a half to get her to the point of kind of even considering that. So when you wait till the last minute. But I would not say any of it's easy. I would just encourage people, it doesn't get easier by waiting. So, do it now.
Right. Well, great advice. I want to make sure we leave enough time to talk about your book. The book is called How to Care for Aging Parents. It's in its 3rd edition. And, I've read some great books out there that have come out on dealing with caring for parents. There's a number of them out there, as you are aware. Tell us more, though, about your book, what inspired you to write it, and how you think it might be different from other books out there.
Well, obviously, it's the best one.
Yeah, of course.
I started on this book in 1991, and there was nothing out there, and there was, if you can remember those days, no internet. Mm-hmm. So it was incredibly hard for caregivers to get any information or to have any sense of what was going on. And when I did it, this is, 700 pages, so it's fairly overwhelming, but I was very careful to make it very simple to sort of, should she be driving? And you just go to that little section, and what do I look for in a nursing home? So, obviously nobody's going to read through, I wouldn't write a book, somebody who's supposed to read through the whole thing of how to care for aging parents. Right. It's just meant to be a kind of A to Z guide that answers all your questions. The 2nd edition came out and the internet was just kind of on the horizon, and my editor said, that's just something young people use. Mm-hmm. So she didn't think it had much future. Obviously, this 3rd edition, which just came out a few months ago, I sort of thought, well, is this even necessary anymore? People go on the internet and they find information. But what's happened is we've almost gone full circle where there's so much information on the internet, and I would say 80% of it is junk and aimed at selling stuff to you and not very good. So, I work very hard at making sure that the information I give is as accurate and helpful and real as possible. I don't give a phone number without calling it and making sure that they're going to actually get what they need calling that number or whatever it is. So, I try to give, clear, accurate information, but I think what I try mostly is to really reassure people that, this is hard, you're doing your best, give yourself a break. I think, honestly, one of the hardest things about this job, aside from just the day-to-day work, is the emotional guilt and endless feeling that you're not doing enough and that you should be doing more, and the constant worry. It's stressful, the relationships with siblings, the relationships with your parents, your children, your husband, your work. I think, or your spouse, I should say, now that more men are involved in this. But, I think more than anything, I just want to give people kind of a friend, like a shoulder to lean on, and let them know that, you just do your best, and here's some tips, but it's not going to be perfect, and you got to take care of yourself. You really, really have to take care of yourself, and I guess that would be my message number 2 is, plan ahead and talk, but number 2 is really take good care of yourself, because this is hard work. Yeah.
The statistics, and there's crazy statistics out there that sometimes the family caregiver does not live as long as the person they're caring for, and you have to take care of yourself. It is tough. It is tough.
Oh, yeah. I don't think sometimes people realize how hard it is until it's all over and they kind of let their shoulders go down again and breathe again and like sort of whoosh, and it can go on for so many years. So you really need to be, have your own life intact.
And we just have about a minute or two left, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this. I want to believe, and I hope things are changing, and that we're still dealing pretty much with the care of that silent generation. The adult children still, for the most part, I mean, the boomers, of course, are aging, but we're usually dealing with the boomers in regards to their parents. And maybe the communication, as we talked about at the beginning, wasn't as strong with them. I want to believe that the boomers today are communicating more with their children. So when the need arises for them, there will have been more open communication. Do you think that's going to be the case, or is that the case?
Well, I hope it's the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a chapter called You're Next that talks about just that, and I hope it's the case. I hear people talking, but I think it's a very tough subject to talk about, and a lot of people just want to put their heads in the sand and not save and not make plans and not... yes, I think it will be better, but at the same time, I think the issues are getting bigger and bigger. People are living longer with more acute illnesses and drawn-out illnesses, and it's I wish I could paint a rosy picture, but I think you're right. I think the boomers have changed everything in their path, and I think they will change this too, and there will be more choices and more discussions and more support and offerings, but I think you and I are both out there trying to get people to do just that, so hopefully, fingers crossed.
Well,
yes.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Before we sign off here, tell people how they can get your book, go to your website. Go ahead and relay that information.
Well, I have a website called careforagingparents.com, and they can go there and order the book through any number of Amazon and all of those bookstores, and get more information, download helpful worksheets and stuff. So
good.
careforagingparents.com.
Great. Well, Virginia Morris, thank you so much for joining us. Go out and get her book, How to Care for Aging Parents, and hopefully we'll have you back in the future when maybe your next update. Let us know, and or if there's anything you'd like to talk about, we'd love to have you on. So thanks so much for taking the time, and thank you all for joining in. You can, again, go to agingboomers.com or download the free app on your iPhone, Android phone. Go to iTunes, go to Spreaker, go to iHeartRadio. But listen to the show, share with friends, and thank you so much for joining us. Be safe out there. We'll talk to you all soon.